Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a single shining needle and really following the longest, most complex thread in history. The vast, strange, and, well, distant land of Faroon.
It's quite a place.
It is a kingdom defined by silk, absolutely soaked in tragedy and ambition, stretching back millennia.
You could argue it's the most richly layered history we've ever looked at. Faroon's story is. It's a chilling cautionary tale, isn't it?
Definitely.
Charting his journey from these lush, vibrant natural kingdoms and then watching it transform into this totalitarian, silk-bound empire, plagued by this ancient affliction that's tragically anchored right into its own twisted past.
So our mission today is to trace this whole evolution, but specifically through the eyes of the one bug who seems destined to untangle it all, Hornet.
Ah, Hornet, child of beast and worm, hero of Hellenist.
Exactly. And she arrives in Farum facing this monumental, multi-generational task. She's got to brave its dangers, reclaim a birthright she might not even, want, and critically stop this haunted spinning of silk before the entire kingdom just collapses into madness and the void.
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
So to really understand the cataclysm she walks into, we absolutely have to go chronologically. We need the true history first.
Right at the beginning?
The very beginning. The age of verdure. That's what defined the natural order before everything changed. Then we'll trace the, insidious rise of the pale monarch, this grandmother silk figure.
Okay.
We'll detail the desperate war of apostasy that erupted, understand the, frankly, chillingly efficient dark age under the citadel of song.
Right, the citadel.
And finally, we land in the current crisis where Hornet has to confront this slumbering god. It's quite a journey.
Let's dive in then. Let's really set the stage. Before the silk, before the pale monarch, before even the idea of servitude really took hold, what did Farum look like in this age of verdure?
It's almost unrecognizable. The descriptions paint this picture of extraordinary natural beauty, ecological harmony.
So verdure, that implies what? Green?
Yeah.
Lush?
Wild, untamed, lush growth, yeah.
Yeah.
Fueled by communities that had somehow figured out how to live in balance with their environment. And you have to picture the landscape Hornet sees now.
Right. The sands, the deserts.
The desolate, cracked, windswept sands of Karak, the blasted steppe. It's just unrecognizable from its past. Those lands weren't dust bowls. They were blue seas, teeming with life near the surface.
Wow, blue seas.
Yeah, hard to imagine now.
And the contamination we see everywhere, the bile water.
Completely unknown back then. That blight didn't exist. You had pristine streams carving across fertile soil, sustaining life without any taint of rot or, putrefaction.
So the core idea was abundance.
Abundance, exactly. Not the scarcity that defines Lato-Farum. It set this really high baseline of natural complexity, which makes what comes later even more tragic. The empires didn't fill a vacuum. They crushed something vibrant.
And even within this natural paradise, bug kind still built complex societies. There were 3 great realms that reached preeminence, right? Each with its own distinct culture.
That's right. Powerful, independent kingdoms. First, you have Karak, known as the Crust Kingdom.
The Crust Kingdom, okay.
Founded deep in those waters that later dried up. Ruled by the formidable Crust King Khan. This was a kingdom of profound discipline, martial focus. They relied heavily on their large warrior caste.
Like the Trisnet Conflies.
The Trisnet Conflies, the Karak legions, yeah. Their whole society was geared towards defense.
And their weapons.
Yeah.
Uniquely tied to where they lived.
Absolutely. They didn't just live near coral, they harnessed it. They actually fused the native coral, which was incredibly sturdy and resilient, right into their weapons, their blades especially.
So they were literally armored by their environment.
Pretty much. The Karaka blade bug is described as fearless and faithful. It wasn't just a kingdom, it was like an armored aquatic fortress defined by this unbreakable material culture and fierce loyalty to King Khan.
Okay, so that's Karak. Then moving east, we find the Scar. Feelsome, disciplined warriors from the Green Tracks.
Yeah, the Scar were defined not just by, fighting prowess, but by this unique spiritual and sonic unity. Their entire civilization was uplifted, united by their leader, Song Queen Carmelita.
Song Queen. So music was important even then.
It seems so. She used both sharp blades and, intriguingly, her captivating voice to lead. There's this recurring phrase, "For you, my children, for you I sing." It really suggests an early understanding of sonic or melodic influence, maybe a precursor to what the Weavers later weaponized. Their loyalty was absolute, a powerful, centralized force.
Okay, Karak, the Scar. And the third was for Dania. This one sounds maybe the most complex, combining aquatic traditions with groves.
Ferdinand was definitely a synthesis. Beauty and cunning. It was protected by these shrewd, sophisticated bugs and ruled, unusually, by two co-equal leaders.
Co-equal?
Yeah, known poetically as the Clover Dancers. Their stability wasn't passive, though. Peace was earned by claw, it says, implying constant vigilance, maybe constant struggle to maintain it.
But based on love, there's something about an oath.
That's what makes them unique. The rule was underpinned by this sacred but ultimately tragic oath, a powerful bond of love. There's a lore tablet found much later that hints at the sorrow baked into their story. Two children born entwined apart. For lovers born on beat exact shall be forever cursed.
Heavy foreshadowing.
Very. Their foundation was deeply emotional, almost fated, which makes their later destruction just all the more poignant.
So these three powerful, independent, resistant kingdoms,
Yeah.
all existing within this bigger, balanced ecosystem, and that ecosystem was managed by something called Neath Shellwood Forest.
Yes, Neath Shellwood. The boughs of this primordial plant were apparently everywhere. It's described as the ancient heart of Faroon, guiding life through a benevolent directive.
Like a god.
Not quite a thinking deity, more like a natural mechanism, dedicated to healthy growth, seeding, maintaining that delicate equilibrium. It represents the absolute pinnacle of natural, unmanipulated existence in Faroon.
Just makes the subjugation that follows so jarring.
Exactly. It wasn't an empty land waiting for a ruler. It was a contested, vibrant space that got completely overturned.
Right. And that brings us to the arrival of Grandmother Silk. This shatters that natural order. Let's unpack who or what she is. She's a pale being. Why is that specific category so critical?
That category tells us everything. Her motivation, her methods. Pale beings, like the Pale King we know from Hallinist or this Grandmother Silk, they operate under a totally different set of rules compared to other ancient entities.
Like the Radiance, or the Nightmare's Heart.
Exactly. Those beings have their own drives, often destructive or consuming. But pale beings, their fundamental drive is different.
They desire veneration, worship.
Precisely. They actively seek to dominate bug populations because faith and devotion aren't just cultural things for them. They're existential fuel. They draw real, tangible power from servitude. It builds up their reserve of soul, as it's called.
Reserve of soul. So how does that work? Is it just magic or something more technical?
It seems like a form of magical resource amplification.
Yeah.
Think about the silk itself. It has these incredible properties, right?
Yeah.
Healing, life extension, weaving runes.
Yeah.
Because it's spun directly from her soul essence. So when a bug shows devotion, that bug's soul energy, their will, gets channeled, maybe purified, through the pale being's dominion. The sheer number of subservient wills creates this constantly replenishing supply of soul.
Like a power grid fueled by faith.
That's a great way to put it, a devotion-based power grid. And that lets the pale beings spin more powerful stuff, extend their influence, and, crucially, live potentially forever.
Which immediately puts them odds with any established kingdom that already has strong will, strong leadership.
Like Karak or the Scar or Ferdania, exactly.
Yeah.
Subjugating them would have been incredibly costly. Direct warfare, massive resource drain.
Grandmother Silk saw that.
She did. Her strategy was, well, brilliant in its cynicism. Instead of fighting the established powers head-on, she decided to create a new race.
A race completely loyal to her from birth.
A race that owed its very existence, and therefore its soul, directly to her. No existing loyalties to overcome.
And the centerpiece of this whole plan, the foundation of Faroon's future tyranny, is the silk itself. She's the primal source.
The silk is the magic. It's described as a fine thread spun from the soul of its creator. Every single strand is fundamentally tethered back to the grandmother's power. That's why it's so potent, so coveted.
Healing, life extension, runes.
Incredible resilience, yeah. All those mystical properties. It's the physical manifestation of her soul power, woven into the world.
So she chooses an existing species, the Ferids, some kind of arachnid.
An arachnid species, yes. And she transforms them, blesses them, supposedly with her silken touch, creates the weavers.
And this transformation, it wasn't just physical.
No, it elevated them dramatically.
Yeah.
Created this new spider race that fused sharp intellect with a kind of primal, predatory savagery, all wrapped up in this beautiful, graceful shell. But this transformation was the birth of the Great Lie.
The Great Lie. She called them her divine daughters. Established Faroon as this grand civilization to honor her. That was the PR campaign.
That was the propaganda, exactly. The hidden reality. Much darker. The weavers were effectively slaves elevated in mind and ability, but nonetheless bound to servitude.
Wow.
Faroon's eventual splendor, its whole existence, was going to be paid by the death of all other realms, a cost borne entirely by the weavers in service to their creator.
And they became incredibly effective tools for this subjugation, didn't they? Through melody.
They inherited a critical skill from her, it seems, the power to captivate, even dominate, lesser minds through song. They used these lilting melodies that cloud minds and bend wills.
So it wasn't conquest by force, necessarily.
Not primarily. It was conquest by seduction, by enchantment. It was insidious.
They lured entire kingdoms away.
Countless bug realms fell for it. Inhabitants just discarded their homelands, willingly flocking to the promise of Mother Silk. It was this continuous, almost passive harvesting operation.
Like the Nameless Town.
The ruins of the Nameless Town, way up high. That's a prime example. A thriving civilization that just voluntarily became a ghost town. Its people lured away by that irresistible silken song, providing Grandmother Silk with a fresh supply of devotion, labor, and soul.
But this whole empire was built on a lie. It had to crack eventually. And that crack starts with the first sinner, found deep down behind the doors of apostasy.
She represents the first domino falling. The first weaver to actually renounce the religion, to commit the sin of apostasy.
And her punishment was severe.
Symbolic and brutal. Penance by constriction, absolution denied. Bound in these powerful silk runes, kept in this perpetual state of near death. But even then, the weavers couldn't fully erase her memory.
Her silk memory held the truth.
Her silk memory, noted as one of the deepest, most dangerous to navigate, held the core, profane truth. They were not God-born. They were mortal beasts, manipulated, raised in nobility only to serve Grandmother Silk, to shower her with the faith that fueled her power.
That single realization, that must have been terrifying and powerful.
It was the spark, the ignition point for the rebellion. But the question is, how did she figure it out? The grandmother must have guarded that secret ferociously.
Yeah, how does she pierce that veil?
Well, there are a couple of compelling theories, and they might actually reinforce each other. The first ties into her specific talents. This first sinner had a masterful talent for weaving silk into blazing runes.
Not just weaving patterns, but weaving power.
Exactly. Not just decorative. It was a profound technical mastery over the silk essence itself. And if silk holds memory,
then mastering silk manipulation could grant access to hidden memories, forbidden ones.
Precisely. Her skill might have been so immense it allowed her to navigate the furthest, most restricted parts of the collective silk memory, the essence tied directly back to the grandmother's creation act, and stumble upon the truth of their humble origins.
She says something like she felt cursed by silk, cursed to know the sin, the truth.
Yeah, that fragmented monologue suggests the immense burden of that knowledge. But there's another layer too, the void. This gets really interesting because it connects Faroon to the bigger picture. We know Faroon had this deep dock diving bell that connected its foundations directly to the abyss.
Okay.
And we know that at least one specific rebellious weave nest, Absalon, wasn't just focused on fighting the grandmother, they were actively researching the void itself.
And the void is, what, anti-pale being?
It's this semi-sentient, black, unknowable substance, a force of ultimate entropy, really. It hungers to claim everything, soul, light, memory. It's fundamentally antithetical to the structured, soul-based power of a pale being.
So, proximity to the void, or maybe even just studying it, could have disrupted the grandmother's control, like static.
It's highly plausible. That void influence might have interfered with, or even severed, the first sinner's mental tether to the grandmother.
Yeah.
Just for long enough.
Giving her that moment of clarity.
That brief, agonizing moment needed to see the truth and ignite the war. It implies, chillingly, that maybe the only thing strong enough to truly break a pale being's dominion is the raw, unthinking power of the void.
Wow. Okay, so that moment of clarity was enough. The knowledge spreads, ignites this huge, destructive war of apostasy, loyalists versus rebels, kingdom on fire.
And amidst that chaos, the rebels had to go underground. Literally, they created this vast, secret tunnel network, the weave nests.
And these weren't just tunnels for hiding.
Their main function was obfuscation. They were shielded by potent warding power, specifically designed to block Grandmother Silk's vision.
Which makes sense if her power relies on sensing through the silk network, sensing soul auras, vibrations, maybe.
That seems to be the key insight, yeah. The warding power must have somehow neutralized or scrambled the soul signatures of the bugs inside, cutting them off from the main silk network, made the nests invisible to her surveillance.
Allowing them to set up labs, develop countermeasures.
Sophisticated laboratories, yes. and developed countermeasures in total secret. They were desperately trying to find a way to fight back on her terms.
Trying to fight fire with fire.
Exactly. We see blueprints later for advanced silk-powered weapons like the snare setter trap, which actually gets used eventually. But their biggest gamble, trying to create their own source of power.
That didn't go well.
To wrest their freedom, all ended in failure, is the line. The tragedy is, they knew the lie, they saw the prison bars, but they just didn't have the innate power, the source power, to create a truly free replacement.
Which led to Ava, their attempt to spin a being purely from silk.
Ava was the ultimate expression of their desperation and maybe their hubris, believing they could replicate the grandmother's creation act.
But she was frail.
A despised child, a wish-cast vain divinity mocked in form too frail. She was hidden away in an iron cage, this constant reminder that their skill, while amazing, was derived. It wasn't primal. They couldn't replicate the source.
Meanwhile, Grandmother Silk, facing this open rebellion, wasn't idle either. She was running her own experiments, far more successful ones.
And far more chilling. She needed replacements. She needed perfectly loyal successors, bugs who couldn't rebel.
First attempt. Phantom.
Phantom. Described as a cruel attempt and a success only in part. She was successfully created from silk, yes, but maybe imperfectly. Over time, her silk stretched thin, her shell stiffened. She got a long life, a transient one, but perhaps not the true, unending immortality the grandmother craved.
And then came lace, the perfect version.
Terrifyingly perfect, spun purer than them, functionally immortal as long as she could replenish her silk stores. But the truly chilling part.
She was programmed.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Spun specifically to wish our waking from our silk. Her fundamental desire woven into her being was her mother's liberation. She was born loyal.
Which suggests she might be incredibly old, created perhaps even during the war.
It certainly supports that idea. Lace wasn't just a replacement. She was potentially a failsafe, designed for the inevitable moment when her mother's temporary captors would eventually falter.
Okay, so despite the rebellion gaining ground, the grandmother's influence was just too pervasive. For many weavers, fighting wasn't an option anymore.
The only choice left was exodus. This leads to the great weaver diaspora. Entire clans just fled Faroon, scattering to distant lands.
Which directly explains Hera and her sisters showing up in deepness and hollowness.
That's the direct narrative link. Their presence, their deep-seated distrust of authority figures.
Especially pale authority figures.
Precisely. They just fought this devastating war to break free from one all-powerful pale being demanding total subservience. So when they bump into the Pale King in Hallowness with his rigid, soul-controlling monarchy,
their reaction makes perfect sense.
it wasn't paranoia. It was hard-earned trauma from Faroon. They weren't eager to sign up for that again.
But the rebels who stayed in Faroon, they eventually rallied the mortal bugs.
They did. Ironically, probably using some of that same inherited domineering aura, that melodic influence, to press the mortal bugs into service for their cause. And they succeeded. They managed to cast down their pale monarch.
A victory, but a very complicated one.
Because they hit that massive paradox. They couldn't actually kill her. Killing the source of all Faroon's silk. That risked their own extinction, the collapse of everything they knew.
So the trap.
An ingenious, desperate solution. They combined their mastery of silk weaving with magically charged harmonies, using music again to lull grandmother's silk into this deep, unnatural slumber, then wrapped her in a colossal cocoon.
And this cocoon, this is the big architectural reveal. Where'd they put it?
Right at the very top, in the cradle at the summit of the Citadel of Song.
The Citadel of Song.
And here's the kicker. The Citadel, this magnificent symbol of power and worship that dominates Faroon later, it didn't exist before this. It wasn't an ancient seat of power they repurposed.
No.
It was conceived and constructed solely as a highly sophisticated church and a cage for Mother Silk's imprisonment. Every single pillar, every hall, every bell. It was all part of the mechanism.
The mechanism to keep her asleep.
To keep the eternal Silksong playing, the harmony resonating, tethering the pale monarch in her deep, dreamless slumber. The entire Citadel is the prison.
Wow. Okay, so the Weavers won the war, but they inherited this impossible situation. They're decimated, facing extinction themselves. It was a painful, near impossible task to conceive a child, apparently.
Right, and this eternal trap they built required an eternal solution to maintain it, something they physically couldn't provide anymore. Their numbers were just too few.
So their solution was radical.
A radical pivot. Seize the throne themselves, usurp divinity.
Yeah.
The remaining Weavers launched this massive propaganda campaign, a systematic, aggressive erasure of Grandmother Silk's memory from history,
Replacing her with themselves.
establishing the superiority of the weavers,
Yeah.
creating new idols, new effigies like Atla, the Weaver of Time, presenting themselves as the eternal rulers who had always been there.
But this required a huge shift in how they interacted with mortal bugs, right? They couldn't just hunt them anymore.
They had to tame their own base predatory instincts. There are lore tablets found later, near places like Mossam and Shellwood, that detail this painful adjustment. Bugs were warded by fear, and there were explicit warnings posted, no longer your meal.
So they swapped predation for protection, but still control.
Tyrannical control, yeah. Protective in the sense that they weren't eating them, but demanding absolute service. And to ensure this control lasted beyond their own dwindling lifespans, they set up 3 powerful, co-equal orders to run the Citadel machine.
The 3 orders. Okay, who were they?
Designed to handle different parts of the imprisonment and propaganda. First, the conductors. They were the cultural stewards, basically, charged with making sure the Silksong, that crucial musical mechanism keeping the grandmother asleep, never ever silenced.
Passed down through generations.
Harp to harp, yeah. Figures like Ballador later inherit this immense responsibility.
Okay, conductors. Second.
The Vault Keepers. They were the religious and bureaucratic arm. High caste bugs responsible for writing the sermons, enforcing ideological purity.
Rooting out dissenters.
Exactly. Anyone deemed insufficiently servant. And crucially, they preserved or maybe edited or outright fabricated Farum's official history. They controlled the narrative completely.
And the third order. The architects. These sound different.
They were the muscle and the mind of the operation. But yeah, different, not traditional bugs, complex cogwork automatons,
Robots.
essentially, animated by this terrifying fusion of twining silk and steel. They managed the mechanical heart of the Citadel, the core. They were purely operational, designed for impressive, industrious, eternal efficiency. No ideology, just function.
And this whole machine, the propaganda, the structure, it worked incredibly well for a while. It gave the Citadel an endless supply of pilgrims.
Oh, the Pilgrim's Path. This might be the most cynical part of the whole Citadel setup. It's an ideological meat grinder, basically.
Oh, so?
Faith provided this endless stream of pilgrims, drawn by the myth of the Citadel as a paradise safety, clean water, abundance. These were the lowest caste. Their sin was yet judged.
So they undertook this dangerous journey?
Through places like Farfields, Greymoor, the Blasted Steppe.
Yeah.
Along the way, they endured these judges who systematically eliminated anyone deemed sinful, which likely just meant anyone who couldn't physically endure the struggle. It was selection through attrition.
What if bugs tried not to go?
Didn't matter. The Clockwork Sentinels, the Citadel's enforcers, made sure any bugs who didn't willingly flock to the bells were rounded up. Forced safe to serve the Citadel was the justification. No one was allowed to opt out.
So the ones who did make it, past the last judge, reaching the magnificent Citadel gate, they thought they'd arrived.
They thought they'd achieved paradise, the ultimate deception. They enter the Citadel, get loaded onto this massive elevator.
Which only goes down.
Only goes down, plunges them straight into the dark, lightless underworks, eternal servitude. The propaganda tells they're blessed to walk the foundations of Farum.
But the reality?
The reality is captured by that pitiful creature Lom. Us works and Citadel breathes. They were fuel, sacrificed to the cold efficiency of the machine.
And that machine, it must have required staggering amounts of energy and produced huge amounts of waste.
Which had immediate, devastating environmental consequences.
Yep.
The Citadel basically poisoned its own surroundings. The sheer volume of waste was just dumped straight into the waterways.
Turning bile water and the putrefied ducts into
Vast, rotting swamps. This ecological destruction wasn't an accident. It was the necessary byproduct of keeping the Citadel running, keeping the song playing.
which in turn fueled resistance, the Stukan tribe.
Exactly. Their home was being destroyed, so they erupted into fierce rebellion. The environmental cost fueled political opposition. But the tragedy spread even further, reaching back to the ancient kingdoms.
Fredania.
The agonizing end of Fredania. One of its clover princes, desperate to save his dying land, made a deal. He aided the architects, lending his genius to create their complex cogwork masterpieces.
Trying to appease the beast to save his people.
He gave his body and soul, hoping to leverage his skill. But Fredania died shortly after anyway. His collaboration achieved nothing.
And his lover, the other prince.
The Green Prince,
Yeah.
just filled with despair, retreated to languish and misery on Sin's road. It's such a bitter story. Shows that even noble collaboration with the Citadel only led to ruin.
So the Citadel is running, but it's decaying from within and without. And then there's the Weaver problem. They're dying out. Silk is getting scarce. How do you maintain an eternal prison if your jailers and the very material of the bars are finite?
That existential crisis looms large. How do you keep the trap sprung if your workforce is mortal? Their solution was abhorrent. The white ward solution.
Using the promise of immortality.
Seducing the high-caste bugs, the elite. Surgeons began infusing their shells directly with silk and soul essence to extend their lives indefinitely. Death became a sin in the Citadel's doctrine.
They became living parts of the prison.
Literally. Shells turned in the wards, bound by the very silk flowing through them, dependent on the Citadel for their continued existence.
Which leads to the absolute most chilling part of the Citadel's function. What happened when bugs did die? Even the enhanced ones eventually, or the lower castes.
They still served. This is the ultimate horror of the Citadel's efficiency. Nothing wasted. Deceased bug souls were meticulously reaped, their corpses incinerated,
and the soul
harvested, manifesting as pure energy, Luma flies. And these Luma fly souls were then used to power the architect's cogwork creations.
Oh my God.
Total resource recycling. Eternity sustained by consuming the dead. That sinister phrase sums it up. Lo is eternity sustained by architect's claw. They built a perpetual motion machine fueled by souls.
That very practice, infusing bugs with silk, that becomes the trigger for the collapse, doesn't it? The inflection point.
It's the ultimate irony. The white ward solution, designed for eternal stability, provided the perfect pathway for grandmother Silk to finally stir.
How?
Even in her weakened, unnatural sleep, she was still the primal source of all that silk. By infusing her essence, her drive, soul energy directly into their own shells, the Citadel's leaders inadvertently created this massive kingdom-wide network for the grandmother's dormant consciousness to creep back in.
They made themselves perfectly vulnerable.
Perfectly susceptible. It opened the door for the haunting. Her unconscious, maybe tormented mind started sending out these invisible silk threads, driving bugs towards madness, discord. It wasn't a sudden attack, it was insidious. Gradual.
Starting with whispers, like the radiance infection in Hallownest.
A very direct parallel.
Yeah.
Not violence first, but altered perceptions, strange thoughts filtering in.
Yeah.
The Citadel leaders got complacent. They forgot the core lesson of the war. You can't cage a god-beast indefinitely without becoming entangled by it.
There's a poem about this, Romano's Folly.
Conductor Romano saw it coming. His poem warned that the Citadel had forgotten the monarch's fundamental beast's nature. They thought they could manage her power. He prophesied that when she finally woke, all their intricate deceptions, their whole fragile order, would shatter in destruction.
And the results of this haunting, they became visible everywhere.
Oh yeah, bugs completely enthralled became like zealous slaves, working tirelessly, mindlessly, trying to physically wake their god. Others, whose minds just broke under the strain of a pale being's consciousness invading their thoughts.
Raving monsters.
Raving monsters, or just empty husks, trapped in an endless, unthinking daze. Pavo Mayer's dialogue later is heartbreaking. Strange, sad memories, not my own. My own thoughts smothered amidst the tangle. The haunted thread made the whole kingdom easy prey.
And this is the chaotic, falling apart Faroon that Hornet gets dragged into, unwillingly.
Right. And she's not just any bug. She's a Weaver descendant, yes, but also a Pale Child, daughter of the Pale King, a higher being in her own right, in a way.
Which makes her a massive prize.
An irresistible target, hunted specifically for the potent, magically charged silk naturally produced within her shell. The Citadel actually sent a high-ranking full-chamber delegation all the way to Hallownest.
To capture her.
Captured her using these special rune cages designed to nullify her own needle and silk abilities. Dragged her towards Faroon.
But she escapes.
A small, almost random miracle. A pale lumafly, maybe one of those recycled souls wandering from the Citadel's depths, landed on her cage. Just gave her enough of a burst of energy of soul to break free during transport. The whole company crashes deep within Faroon.
So her first task is basically survival, and then reclaiming her abilities. The needle-in skill. She confronts someone called Widow.
Widow is such a tragic figure. A captive weaver, completely broken by the Citadel, twisted into this religious zealot. She's found on the Pilgrim Road, strumming a melody, but not the lullaby to keep the grandmother asleep.
She's trying to wake her.
Trying to awaken her. She's fully bought into the later Citadel propaganda, or maybe the grandmother's direct influence. Hornet has to defeat her, and in doing so, reclaims the ancient, powerful needle-in skill.
Let's clarify what the needle-in actually is. It's more than just hitting things.
Oh, much more. It's the absolute pinnacle of Weaver magic. It's the ability to use music, specific harmonies, played on her needle like an instrument, to resonate with the silk in others.
To access memories.
Access memories preserved in silk, yes. Peer into their past, understand their motives, maybe even influence their will. It's the same kind of sonic power the original weavers used to control lesser minds, and ironically, the same kind of power used in the song that imprisoned the grandmother.
So Hornet mastering it is a huge step, reclaiming her heritage.
As both a weaver descendant and a pale child, yeah. And all through this early part of her journey, she's being watched.
By Lays.
By Lace, the silk-spun daughter, born loyal, remember. She observes Hornet's climb with this mix of contempt, seeing her as just a weaver's child, but also undeniable curiosity. She keeps challenging Hornet.
Why?
Compelled by her ingrained programming, her mother's silent command maybe, to ensure the grandmother is freed.
She sees Hornet as an obstacle to that, initially.
Okay, so Hornet needs to get into the Citadel proper. She have two paths, the Pilgrim's Route or the Sinner's Road.
Right. The Pilgrim's Route means facing the terrifying last judge, the final gatekeeper of that path. The Sinner's Road, that takes her through the absolute bowels of the place, the exhaust organ, the soul recycling plant.
Exactly. The mechanism where those dead Lumafly souls are gathered and pumped back into the system. And it's tended by Phantom.
Lace's failed sibling.
Yeah. Phantom, resigned to her transient, imperfect existence, basically just wants a glorious end, a brilliant death in combat. Another tragic figure.
Whichever way Hornet goes, she finds the Citadel. Silent.
Deathly silent. It's unnerving. The building that was designed to sing eternally is just. Draped in a suffocating blanket of silk, halls littered with the husks of dead or enthralled bugs. The song has stopped.
And life only returns when the very thing they built the Citadel to prevent actually happens.
When Grandmother Silk starts to properly awaken, her shrieks, even muffled from the cradle, send out these charged silk strands, re-energizing the husks, reanimating the fallen, all driven by her singular purpose now. The silence is replaced by this desperate, hungry chaos.
But Hornet manages to create a small pocket of safety. She activates a shrine.
A single, clear chime rings out. It's a call of hope, really.
Yeah.
Calls out to all the wretched and lost pilgrims, the survivors still wandering. It establishes a small haven called Clave.
And this is where the caretaker appears, the snail shaman.
This mysterious, shrouded snail shaman emerges to aid her. Their presence is significant. It signals the involvement of forces completely outside the Weaver Silk Pale being cycle. Offers a potential path away from just replacing one god with another.
Okay, so Hornet's in, she has a base, she has an ally. Now she needs to get to the cradle, the very summit. But the lift is guarded by the cogwork dancers.
The dancers.
Yeah.
They're not just guards, they are devastating. A layered tragedy made manifest.
Oh, so they're automatons, right?
Lethal, yes, but breathtakingly beautiful automatons. Built by that Verdania prince, remember? The one who traded his soul and genius to the architects, hoping to save his kingdom. He poured his skill, his essence, into creating these simulacra of his lost lover, the Green Prince, mimicking their shared fighting prowess, their ancient tragic love story, all encoded into the movements of these elegant, deadly dancers.
So destroying them isn't just clearing a path.
It's also, in a way, releasing the final lingering echo of that lost love. The Green Prince's lover's soul, or maybe just the memory of it, is finally freed from its artistic bondage when they fall. It's a profoundly sad victory.
And after that, the key to the cradle lift itself, the threefold melody, representing the three factions that ran the Citadel.
Exactly. She needs to gather the missing parts of the original locking mechanism, the song pieces held by each order. First, the vault keepers, the historians, and propagandists.
Where does she find their piece?
Deep in the whispering vaults. She finds Vault Keeper Cardinius, still sort of clinging to the old ways, but he directs her to the corpse of his former master. There, she retrieves the sacred cylinder containing their part of the tune. It wasn't music to them, it was a record, a piece of controlled history.
Okay, one down. Second, the architects in the cogwork core.
She finds the last functioning architect, still diligently working amidst the decay. And fascinatingly, this architect seems self-aware. It explicitly refers to its duty as maintaining a prison.
It knows what the Citadel really is.
Seems so. It directs Hornet to an automated chorus high up in the core. But to get there, she needs a new skill.
The claw line.
A lightning-fast grappling technique, learned from another Weaver shrine she finds. It's essential for navigating the complex vertical machinery of the core.
So she uses the claw line, reaches the chorus.
Activates the decommissioned system, and gets the architect's complex rhythmic part of the song. The automaton confirms its nature as it helps her. To build, automate is not choice, it is our nature directive cage. servitude hard-coded.
Chilling. And the final piece, the conductors.
Conductor Ballador, the last custodian of the eternal song. She finds him near death.
And he helps her.
Willingly. He's consumed by remorse. He spills the truth. The conductors took the power greedily, only realizing too late that ruling the Citadel wasn't a crown, it was a yoke, a burden they couldn't handle. He gives Hornet the final rune harp, passing the true duty of the original Weavers, maintaining freedom, not just imprisonment, onto her, hoping she can finally succeed where they failed.
3 melodies gathered, the lift unlocked. But before she ascends, one last confrontation.
Lace, waiting right before the cradle lift. And this isn't just a fight. It's raw emotional fallout.
She feels replaced, broken.
Yeah, her dialogue reveals this deep pain, feeling like a child too broken, her perfect programmed loyalty being overshadowed by Hornet's arrival, and her final desperate question cuts right to it. Cursed by Silk. It's you that she wants, is it not?
Which forces us to ask, why does Grandmother Silk want Hornet? It seems complicated.
It's probably a mix of things. Pure vengeance is likely part of it, punishing the descendant of the Weavers who imprisoned her. Also, as a weakened pale being, she'd see Hornet Weaver, Warrior, Worm, Pale Child as the ultimate lieutenant to bind to her will and restore her kingdom.
But maybe the most practical reason.
Survival. Grandmother Silk is weak after centuries of slumber. Hornet is this unique walking battery of potent, magically charged silk. Ripping that silk from Hornet's shell could instantly bolster the Pale Monarch's power, giving her the energy needed to fully rise and reclaim control.
So Hornet takes the lift, ascends to the cradle, this graveyard of hopes and cages, and finally confronts Grandmother Silk, pulsing inside that immense cocoon.
It must be terrifying. The Pale Monarch demonstrates this raw, complete mastery of silk and needle. But critically, the needle end skill doesn't work on her.
Why not?
Because she's the primal source of the silk. Magic derived from her own essence can't control her. Hornet can't use the subtle approach. She has to resort to brute force.
The first binding.
She plunges her needle directly into the Pale Monarch, an act of sheer will, physical force, trying to bind her power, leech her essence, just topple the god who built and broke Faroon.
She wins. She dominates the grandmother. But the caretaker, the snail shaman, steps in again.
Right. The shaman offers a crucial perspective, just dominating the grandmother, taking her place. That's just repeating the cycle of pale power, isn't it? Replacing one tyrant with another, potentially.
So they offer an alternative, the snare.
A permanent solution, a trap, using snail shaman magic, something beyond the Citadel's silk-based understanding, designed to capture a higher being for good. Hornet agrees. She drives the grandmother's immense subdued essence towards this newly created snare.
And activating the snare opens the floor to the void.
The abyss gapes open, that black, unknowable, hungry force the ancient weavers researched and feared. The snare, meant to contain the grandmother, instead acts like a giant vacuum, pulling the void upwards.
It goes wrong immediately.
Horribly wrong. Grandmother Silk, maybe sensing the ultimate threat, tries to drag Hornet down with her into oblivion. But Lace
saves her.
performs one final, desperate act. Whether it's programmed loyalty or genuine love, who knows? She severs her mother's arm, saving Hornet. But the power vacuum created by banishing the monarch, plus the snare's activation, it fully awakens the void below.
And the void spreads.
Ravenous for all the soul energy being released. Void tendrils latch onto Faroon's existing silk network, spreading like wildfire, corrupting shells, forming this horrifying void mass.
Trading one threat for another, an arguably worse one.
As the Hunter's Journal notes later, Void seeks now to claim this land whole. They've swapped a subtle mind control for raw, existential annihilation.
And the land itself reacts. Earthquakes.
Violent quakes rack Faroon, described as the mourning of a distraught mother as the void surges. Hornet is crushed by guilt. This disaster feels like her fault. And Grandmother Silk, even as she's dragged into the abyss, uses her last power.
Not for revenge.
For protection. She weaves one final cocoon around Lace, shielding her cherished daughter from the void corruption. Meanwhile, the snail shamans admit this was maybe not the best plan. They point Hornet towards the old diving bell in the deep docks as the only way down into the abyss to try and fix it.
And Hornet realizes the only thing that can stop the void is the delicate flower, the everbloom from Hellenist.
A fragile bud that naturally repels the void. But how do you bring something from another kingdom tied to another ecosystem into Faroon?
The shamans have a way, but it requires hearts.
3 hearts, not literal hearts, but the lingering essence, the powerful protective aura of Faroon's greatest, most resisting ancient bugs. The leaders from the Age of Verdure, their memories, their power, need to be harvested.
Which means Hornet has to use the elegy of the deep spell. This sounds dark.
It's profoundly difficult, ethically complex. She has to essentially dive into the pure memories of these long-dead legends, King Khan, the twin princes of Fredania, Queen Carmelita.
And kill them in their prime.
Slay their memory forms in their prime. Yes, it's like destroying the idealized past, the very glory she might have hoped to restore in order to claim their essence. Believing that only through this ultimate sacrifice can a truly new future be forged, it's the absolute highest cost for liberation.
She does it, consumes the hearts. And this triggers a final vision, a red memory.
Culminating in an audience somehow across time and space with her stepmother, the White Lady, Queen of Hellenist.
Who confirms the connection? The void curse.
The White Lady confirms the horrifying truth. The void is a familial curse, tied intrinsically to the Pale King's experiments and the fate of all their children, the Vessels. But she reassures Hornet. She too is key. Daughter of the Pale King, half-sister to the Vessels. She has the strength to face it.
And guides her to manifest the flower.
Using the power of those collected hearts, the remembrance, the White Lady helps Hornet manifest the Everbloom within Faroon, giving her the protection needed to descend into the abyss.
Down she goes. Armed with the flower, she confronts Lace again.
A third time. But this isn't a battle of rivals anymore. It's an act of rescue. Hornet uses the flower's power to free Lace from the void's aggressive corruption. And in that moment, maybe even the fading consciousness of Grandmother Silk sees it. Their desires have finally aligned. Saving Lace is all that matters.
So the grandmother helps.
Offers her very last fragment of life force to fuel a desperate silk shot, propelling both Hornet and Lace toward the surface, away from the collapsing abyss.
And then, the ultimate intervention.
The Shade Lord appears. The Knight's final form, the ultimate unified void entity. But instead of consuming them,
it recognizes Hornet.
Recognizes her as kin, a sister, another pale child grappling with a void legacy. In a moment of unexpected protection, the Shade Lord banishes the remaining void tendrils, rescues the pair, the abyss seals, the void retreats, the tremors stop.
Faroon is free. Finally, truly free from the haunted threads.
Free, but scarred. Deeply scarred.
Okay. We have covered an absolutely immense historical arc today. From the wild, pristine Age of Verdure, through the manipulative lies of the Pale Monarch, the cold, mechanized cruelty of the Citadel of Song, and finally to this dramatic, incredibly costly liberation brought by Hornet.
The irony just hangs so heavy over it all, doesn't it? The Weavers fight so hard to defeat one pale being demanding their devotion, only to immediately take her place on the throne and fall into the exact same patterns of exploitation.
Using bugs for labor, for soul energy, for eternal servitude.
The very architecture they built to keep themselves safe, the Citadel, became their own gilded cage, perpetuating the cycle.
It really drives home that point. Knowledge without application is useless. The Weavers knew the truth, they knew the horror of their own enslavement, but they failed to apply the wisdom that should have come from that. They chose power instead of freedom.
And look at the cost. The ecological ruin of Bylewater, the corruption of ancient lands, the total collapse of the Citadel's intricate infrastructure, that whole horrific soul recycling operation. Faroon is in ruins. Silk, the foundation of their society, is incredibly scarce now, and the false promise of immortality, gone.
Which brings us right to the final provocative thought for you, the listener. Grandmother Silk is banished. The void has retreated, for now. But Faroon is a husk. It was a kingdom founded entirely on silk, built solely to imprison a god. Now that foundation has crumbled, the god is gone, and mortality is a very real problem again. What comes next?
Yeah, what knowledge, what skills will the remaining bugs who are described as sturdy, resilient survivors actually rely on? How do they build a truly free future? One that avoids the twin traps, the Pale Monarch's manipulative control, and the Weaver's hubristic tyranny.
Do they try to reconnect with the echoes of the Age of Verdure, find a new balance with nature, or do they have to forge something entirely new, completely free of ancient powers and tangled threads?
A kingdom with no foundation and no god left to cage or worship. That's a profound question. Where do they even begin?
A question we'll have to leave hanging there. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the silken story of Faroon. Keep exploring, keep learning.
And we'll see you next time.